Here we've got a shrub which is a bit sort of all over the place, but at this early time of year it has these teeny tiny yellow flowers, and you'd have hoped that they would have been scented, but I'm afraid not. This is a shrub called Lindera reflexa. In an earlier video I showed you a Cornish bred hybrid rhododendron called crossbill, and I said the sticky out stamens rather reminded me of one of its parents, and here it is, a remarkably sort of un-rhododendron-like rhododendron. This is Rhododendron spinuliferum. Now I want to talk a bit about this, you might consider rather undistinguished small tree, which goes by the name Cleyera japonica. Now I think it's got a lovely leaf, and the new growth is a kind of a pale reddy brown, which doesn't sound great, but it is actually very nice. And here's a little sample coming out of the trunk. Now, Cleyera is named after Andreas Cleyer, a German who joined the Dutch East Indies Company, and as a soldier, but he was also a qualified doctor, and he went to Japan to run their station on, strangely, on an artificial island off Nagasaki called Dejima. The Portuguese were not allowed to trade from the mainland, and so they created a sort of semicircular island off Nagasaki and traded from there. In the 1680s this is, that he was there, and he did a lot of studying of the local flora and, funnily enough, fauna, because he wrote treatises which included the tea plant and Javanese elephants. So rather wide-ranging, I think you'll agree. And the photograph is from one of his treatises, and you'll see that on the right hand side there's the camellia, the tea camellia, and the Japanese for camellia flower, I believe it's tsubaki. He spells it tsumaki. And on the left he's talking about another witch hazely type plant called Distylium racemosum. Out of the pool of blossom that is the giant snowflake is my shrubby form of Cleyera japonica. This is even more shrubby because over its life it's had things falling on it, branches broken, and in fact just a few weeks ago all the middle was smashed down by an oak tree branch which came down during our storm Eunice. I just love the foliage, which I think is very smart, lustrous and evergreen. It is, you'll be fascinated to hear, I know, often confused with a very close relative, which is called Turnstromia. Now this Turnstromia differs somewhat in its blunter leaves, and it has quite nice new growth. In fact, they say that there's one form which is called liane, which has really red new growth to rival Photinia red robin, they say. I haven't seen it. I have grown Turnstromia, or what was labelled that, several years ago, but it died after a couple of years. It's supposed to be quite tender, but it is often confused with this plant in nurseries, and the labelling is often wrong. Now here is the variegated form, which for many years was marketed as Cleyera fortunei, but and it even found its way into the flora of China as Cleyera fortunei, and remarkably there was no green form. Made me very suspicious indeed, and they had to admit in the end that this is actually a variegated form of Cleyera japonica. So what they've done is they've said this is Cleyera japonica and given a clonal name, fortunei. Unfortunately, at the end of a winter, it does look rather tatty, I have to admit. But from afar, it gives a bit of a brightness to the scene, and the new growth is nice and red. Just one more story to tell you about this evergreen Cleyera tree. And that is, in the 1980s, I was becoming very keen on magnolias, and I had located an evergreen magnolia from China. These were just coming in. Nobody knew how hardy they were, but this one was called Magnolia wilsoni, which I planted by a wall, and I'd read about another one which was reputedly very hardy, and I thought I must have that. I looked about and I found the nursery which said it had this Magnolia compressa, which is what this extremely hardy form was called, and so I bought it, and I thought this looked rather more like a camellia than a magnolia, and I must say after a couple of years it flowered with a little bunch of tiny white flowers in the axils of the leaves, nothing like a magnolia. My suspicions were aroused, and I saw that several others were being sold as Magnolia compressa, and turned out to be this Cleyera japonica. How this occurred, I have no idea, but it did. And it was not until only a few years ago that I managed to locate what I'm sure is Magnolia compressa. So it's taken me 35 years to locate it, and the tree here is flowering for the first time with its little white flowers, as you can see, and there are a few more up here. So I'm very pleased to see that this is now the actual magnolia I've been after for 40 years. At last satisfied. We'll just come up and have a look at a favourite combination of mine, which is a beautiful delicate pink of this small tree, which is called Staphylea holocarpa Rosea. There we are. That's an easy one to remember. Isn't that gorgeous? Lovely pale and rosy pink. And in the background is a magnolia, which is called Sweet Merlot. The two together, I think, make a lovely combination of colours. As we walk past the magnificent Magnolia Milky Way, I'll leave you to have a wander around the garden on your own.